Okay.
Just punch it in the face. Let's go.
All right, we're just doing it live. What's up, everybody? My name is UncleMoppy. This is my friend, Who the Fuck. I've been a friend of Who for over about a year now, a year and a half. And one of the things that I cherish about him is that he's very open and engaging with his prayer service. It's been very enjoyable for me personally to have him as a friend and a confidant, to have conversations that are more meaningful than the typical conversation you have with your online friend. I asked him last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now, to be interviewed for our Wounded Warrior Project charity stream, and here he is to give us a little bit of history.
Hi, I'm Who. Who the fuck is this? Is my is the name I'm most
Gamer tag.
by. My gamer tag.
Yeah.
And most of my friends online call me Who or WTF. My real name is Sean Kavanaugh. I was a sergeant in the United States Army for 8 years. And I was, my job in the Army was a dog handler. So that means that I trained and used dogs to locate explosives and people who may have been a danger to others. And in my 8 years in the Army, I was deployed twice, once to Iraq, once to Afghanistan. And I'm here today to hopefully talk to you guys and help your understanding of what it means to be a veteran, maybe.
I like that. Yeah.
And hopefully to help in any way that I can the Wounded Warrior Project. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, bud.
Thank you for joining us. It really means the world to me.
Just gonna crush some bikes in here.
He's already used this joke twice on me, and the first time I was like, wait, really? Apparently it's just gum, guys. What made you decide to serve your country?
My father and my father's father.
And your father's father?
We're both construction workers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to give you some rousing patriotic speech. Like that. To say that I had a love of country and dedication to duty. But the reality of it is that I was 18, 19 years old, managing a pizza shop, and had no direction in life, had no real future. I was a terrible student. I barely graduated high school. And so one day, my friend, who was also a terrible student and barely graduated high school, who was working in a pizza shop, said we should join the Marine Corps. And I said, sure, yeah, let's do that.
Was it
I
really?
got nothing better planned.
Was it
I got
really
nothing better
that much of a
planned.
whim? I mean, you like, did you talk about this with your parents, or was there any kind of reflection, or was it literally on your lunch break you just sort of walked over to the recruiter?
There was a little bit more consideration than that.
Yeah.
Maybe like a week's worth of consideration.
Okay. Which seems appropriate for an 18-year-old. I mean, they're not exactly known for their introspection and forethought. So, honestly, a week is pretty impressive.
Yeah. So, went down to the recruiter's office to join the Marine Corps. The Marine recruiters were out for the day, but the Army recruiters were there. And that's how I ended up joining the Army. And initially, I joined the Army Reserves because even though I was a terrible student and barely graduated high school, I had this delusion that I was going to go to college at 18, 19 years old and make something better with myself. I say delusion, not a delusion for everyone. You should definitely try. I tried. Didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
So I joined the reserves for a year, tried college. I was not ready for college at 18, 19 years old. And I joined the active duty Army. My first actual duty station outside of where I was in training for 6 months was Fort Huachuca, Arizona. That is south of Tucson in Arizona, middle of nowhere in the desert. Spent about 2 years there as a regular military police patrolman. Decided I didn't like that. That was boring. Also decided I wanted to spend more time in the Army, so I re-enlisted and asked for a different job. They told me that I could be an investigator or a dog handler. I chose dog handler because dogs sound like more fun.
Have you always been a dog guy?
Sure.
Do you have any pets
I
right
mean,
now?
Yeah, I've got a dog and a cat.
Okay, just making
Sitting right
sure.
here.
Just making sure.
He's asleep.
We're not going to wake him up for this interview.
No. So I became a dog handler. I went to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas for 3 months to train to be a dog handler. After that, I was stationed in Baumholder, Germany, which is a beautiful place to live. Beautiful climate, beautiful scenery, beautiful beer.
Some may even call it paradise on earth.
Paradise on earth. Some have called it that. Yep. We should go there sometime. You and
field trip. Let's do it.
Okay, field trip. Yeah, that's what I said. What?
Let's go for it.
So where's that? So I was stationed in Germany. While I was stationed in Germany, I deployed to Iraq. Came back from Iraq, deployed to Afghanistan. Came back from that. Got PCS'd, which means permanent change of station. So moved to a place called Fort Rucker, Alabama. Little trivia: Fort Rucker, Alabama is the location, also in the middle of fucking nowhere in Alabama.
So you actually broke up there for a second. Home of military aviation. Right?
Army aviation.
Army aviation.
Army aviation. Yeah, Army aviation.
Gotcha.
Also in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
In Alabama.
In the sticks.
In the sticks. Met my wife there. We've been married for like 10 years now. When we got married, she got orders to PCS to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I went with her. So we both got orders in PCS to Fort Benning, Georgia, and that was our last duty station. We both got out there.
The first time we did this, you mentioned that you were born and raised in Florida, and that you are now back down there. Is there any other connection to Florida that you feel is relevant to your military career?
No.
Just kind of where you call home.
Yeah. So originally, like I said, I was born and raised in a city called St. Petersburg, Florida. And that's really hot. And when I joined the Army, they sent me to this place called Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for 6 months of training in September. That's when I started. So I spent the entire winter.
Let's see, 6 months starting at September. Yeah, that's not a pleasant time to be in the Great Plains.
No, I had to learn how to run on ice.
Did they give you cleats? Did you have like some kind of...
No.
It was you just slipped all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I bet there were a lot of injuries from that.
Yeah.
Bruised
I think,
butts.
like the first morning I was there, they gave us a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. our PT shorts and t-shirt,
Yeah.
and you don't wear. They told us not to wear underwear with it, so it's just like these running shorts with like the,
Yep.
like the mesh, and they're just really thin. It's not like sweatpants or anything like that. It's just thin material, like windbreaker material,
So
and a cotton t-shirt.
There was some
And
shrinkage, let's say.
yeah, it was September, like I said. I want to say the first morning was like 30 degrees outside.
Jeez.
Which is not a number that I was familiar with,
Yeah.
in terms of temperature.
I bet the low in St. Pete in January is probably 50.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I hate that place called Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most people who have been there would also agree that it's a shithole. Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't go into like the Arctic troops or something, you know?
Oh yeah.
Do a little
that,
do a little cross country skiing on the side.
Right. Try new things.
Yeah.
Freeze your dick off.
Get outside your comfort zone.
Freeze your dick off.
Well, you know, we can breeze past that part.
Are we PG-13 here? Or are we ready to?
Fuck it, we're doing whatever.
Okay.
This is we will mark this not safe for the children.
Yeah, not safe for your kids. Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Exactly.
They're raping everybody out here.
Exactly. So you kind of breezed past the boot camp part, but I was curious if there are any memories or funny moments or anything like that that you can recall from that period of your life. Because I've heard from several of my friends that it's shocking, I guess, maybe the most appropriate word for how you're treated during that time.
What was the word again?
Shocking.
Shocking.
Yeah.
It is a shock. It is a shock. I was terrified before I joined the army that I was going to be brainwashed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was like this real fear that I had, that I would be brainwashed, and
you just become a yes man.
That I would not know who I was anymore.
Right.
And, this basic training, this boot camp, changed me, and certainly it changed me. Funny stories. So we had this one drill sergeant who was
every story in boot camp that says we had this one drill sergeant is like, okay, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen.
His name was Drill Sergeant Johnson. And he talked like this, probably. He would talk like he didn't even have like all the letters in the alphabet. And he would talk like this, probably. And he would come up to you. He wouldn't yell as much. He would just come up to you and be real quiet in your ear, and he'd be like, "Hey, Pop. Hey, Pop, you heard me say that information to have your motherfucking rucksack square the fuck away, right? You heard that, right, Pop?" He had no R. It's just PW, private. Yo, private. So we would make these, we would have like these at night. Right before lights out, we would have like these, when no one was around, have these little like imitation games. Like, hey, private. Hey, private. Look me in my eyeball, private. You ever been to prison?
No, sir.
You ever been fucked in your ass, private?
No, sir.
First time for everything, private.
Yes, sir.
That's what he would do. He would come up in your fucking ear, and you would think that he was about to ask you if you wanted to get fucked in the ass.
That's a different take on the drill sergeant. Than...
Yeah, most of them are like, "Aye!"
very screamy.
He was very much like all up in your shit, and he would be like, "Hey, private. Hey, private. You want to come over to my place tonight, private? Have a little wine, private?"
Just shows that there's no right path. Right? I mean, you can get to the destination however you choose.
We had I had my senior drill sergeant was named Drill Sergeant Ploss, and he was a ripe asshole. He hated me. He hated me.
Did he hate
I'm
you
not sure.
specifically, or
Yeah,
did he hate
specifically
everybody?
hated me.
Okay, so
Specifically
he was
hated me.
like targeting you.
Yeah, he did not like me, and I'm not sure why, because I didn't really stand out or anything. Um, he just didn't like the look of me or something, and he would
He
always
could
tell
see
me
your
that
potential, and he knew you weren't reaching it.
I don't think that's what it was. I think he was just an asshole. Um, so he would always tell me that I was gonna amount to nothing. He's like, "You're worthless, Kavanaugh. You're fucking worthless. Uh, you will be lucky, Kavanaugh, if you graduate basic training. Luckier still if you graduate and make it into your career field. And if you don't die within the first 2 months of your own stupidity, I'll be shocked."
Wow. That's
You know what my answer was?
What'd you say?
Yes, drill sergeant.
That's your answer every time a drill sergeant addresses you.
That's right.
Correct? Yeah.
That's right. That's correct. That's a good piece of trivia for you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whenever addressed by a drill sergeant,
night,
it is yes, drill
when you go to
sergeant.
trivia night, and they're like, "Hey, what did the private say to his drill sergeant?" You'd be like, "Yes, drill sergeant," and then you win the trivia. That's
No matter
how you
what,
win.
just into that conversation.
Just remember me when you win the trivia for $1 million. When you go to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, just remember me.
And that's for the million dollar question. That's
Yeah.
how did you address?
What did the private say to his drill sergeant? Yes, drill sergeant.
That does sound like $1 million question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, right. Some easy shit. I watched the video the other day of the guy who was like so confident that he was gonna he was like, "I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty fucking smart."
Yeah.
And he lost on the first question.
The first question. Yeah. That one's made the rounds on the internet, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we specifically want to get into deployment. I don't want to put you on the spot or anything like that. So feel free to maneuver however you want with this question conversation. But so we know you were deployed. We know you went to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yep.
Obviously, you have memories of that event, but is there anything striking that you want to share with us that kind of reveals a bit of the psyche of veterans that may have come back from these wars?
So I have friends who, and I had a friend who I wanted to have as one of your guests as well on here, who would say things like, "I didn't really do anything. Yeah, I was there, but I don't really have like a great story to tell." Who would feel like their sacrifice was not enough. And what I would say is that all gave some gave all. Nobody had an easy time. It's just some made it out more unscathed than others. But we all came out with scratches.
Either physical or emotional or hidden down inside or however.
So I deployed to Iraq. That was pretty tough for me. We didn't actually lose anyone there, but lots of time living in austere environments. Lots of 48-hour staying awake ops looking for explosives. So when I signed up to be a dog handler, they were like, "It's cool, man, you get to play with dogs." And then they tell you once you actually like sign your line, they're like, "By the way, you're gonna have to look for explosives." You know, sorry, what'd you say?
I think maybe this should have been briefed beforehand.
We go back like 5 minutes before I signed that dotted line, because you said explosives, and
that wasn't mentioned before.
Yeah. So that hit home for me when I went to Iraq, which was, again, my first deployment, where I was actively looking for IEDs, which stands for Improvised Explosive Device. So this is essentially like a booby trap or a landmine. It's meant to kill you. And here I am with a dog tethered to me, looking for that thing.
Seeking it out.
Yeah, not an incredibly safe job.
Yeah, the dog's job is to identify the smell of the explosive.
Correct.
Yeah. And to go towards it.
That's right.
And usually they'll ID it, they'll sit or whatever it is that their trigger is, right? But
yep.
Regardless, not a fun kind of job, just thinking about it objectively.
Right. So, like I said, went to Iraq. Didn't lose anyone that was close to me there. But that was a tough deployment for me. This is my first deployment. It's always tough for everyone. I was in northern Iraq, just south of a big city called Mosul, which has been in the news a lot recently because of ISIS. Made it home pretty well unscathed. I waived my dwell time because I wanted to deploy again because I was an idiot, and so I spent 5 months back in Germany to deploy again to Afghanistan. Went to Afghanistan. I want to say my first month there, one of my friends and role models, his name was James Ide. He was shot in the head and killed. And then that's when things got real for me. That's
kind of came home that the significance of what was happening.
That's around the time when I legitimately thought that I wouldn't make it out of there alive. Just the nicest guy you could ever meet or hope to meet. You know, in the Army, there's lots of yelling a lot of the times. There's lots of sort of cruel speech back and forth. There's lots of, I wouldn't even call it tough love. There's just lots of toughness. And there's not really any time for you know, emotions. And Sergeant Ide never really he never really had that sort of attitude. He was always a very chill guy. Everyone respected him. Everyone liked him. He never had to yell at anyone. He never had to be cruel to anyone to get his point across. Everyone just sort of followed his lead when he led because they respected him. And that was a tough loss for a lot of us. A really tough loss for a lot of us. But that's when it hit home for me that, like, this isn't bullshit. Like, the magic of it all sort of went away real fast. And this is a thing that happens with a lot of soldiers when they're deployed to combat zones, is they have to grow up in about 5 minutes. You know, it's all fun and games. You're a kid playing with a rifle with body armor on, and then that first bullet goes past your head, and you got about 5 minutes to grow the fuck up and get your shit together. Like, we're not in basic training anymore. We're not back in our duty stations in the field playing soldier. You either get your shit together or you're dead. And that happened for me. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was just a kid and didn't know what I was getting myself into, you know, up until, 2000, let's say 2010. I joined in 2005. I'd say for the first 5 years, I had no clue what I got myself into.
Right. It was kind of it was almost like an idea in your head that wasn't actualized until you saw that.
Sure. We're an army. We're a fighting force. We're here to destroy the enemy. None of those things seem like a reality until the enemy is trying to destroy you. Mm-hmm. Until one of your friends catches a round to the head. Until that first grenade or IED actually blows up. And that's funny. Like, IEDs had hit my vehicle in Iraq. Like, my vehicle had been blown the fuck up. We survived because we had armored vehicles and they were really weak IEDs. Right. But, like, we had been engaged in combat by the enemy before. But again, it's not until that shit gets real close to home, that first round passes like literally that close to your head, and you can feel it or you can hear it, or one of your buddies goes down. That's when things get real. And like I said, you got about 5 minutes to grow the fuck up, or you're dead. And a lot of us had to grow up real fast in a combat zone, which is not a conducive environment to people growing up.
No. You mentioned that the service, especially in a military or a combat environment, is not a place for emotions.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that has contributed to any additional stress in your life since then?
Yeah.
I'm trying to beat around the bush with PTSD, but I think that's a very honestly, one of the major reasons why we have to have this conversation.
Like I say, all gave some gave all, and sure, yeah, I have PTSD, bad. Part of it reared its ugly head on 4th of July when a firework went off like right outside my house. One of those little mortar fireworks that you buy and it's in the tube, whatever. Went off like right above my roof outside my house. Just people having a good time. But I had my headphones off. And it was pretty loud. And I spent the rest of the night pacing around in a circle, trying to avoid that into my house until like 3 a.m. until I finally just kind of passed out from exhaustion. But there is no time for emotion in a combat zone. And to a lesser extent in the Army. Revealing that you're having an emotional reaction appears like weakness in the Army. And we have the soldier's creed. It says, I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough. That's just part of it. It's not the whole thing.
Right.
But when you feel like someone is no longer mentally tough, you start to see them as like the weak link, and we have to be made up of strong links in the Army to survive. nobody wants to feel like the weak link is going to let them down. And when I was in, they will do their best to weed you out, to either try to make you a strong link again, or to get you out of the chain. And luckily, as I was ending my career in the Army, they started doing that with a little bit more compassion. Versus when I started my career in the Army, it was just get the fuck out, you weak piece of shit. And like literally, people would go see the mental health clinic, and they would do everything they could to hide that from their chain of command or their peers, because there was a stigma attached to it, and you could not. You would get razzed, or you would get called into your commander's office, and they would try to determine whether or not you were fit for duty. And if you were no longer fit for duty, your career's over. Sorry, pack your shit. I'm sorry that you were exposed to literal, like, earth-shaking events in your life. I'm sorry that you lost, like, a lot of your friends. I'm sorry that you came inches away from death.
Repeatedly.
But we can't have that shit in the Army. You need to get the fuck out. Say goodbye to your career. I know dudes that were like lifers, 12 years in the Army, who would have gone the full 20. Once you pass like 10 years, you may as well do 20. I know dudes who were like, you know, E6s, E7s even, who just had like mental breakdowns, and they had to get out, or they were forced out.
Right.
But after the Army, these things, they don't leave you. You know, it's not like, oh, well, we're done with the Army now, we can just forget about all that wacky shit. Carries over. And everyone, I would say everyone's going to experience PTSD differently. For me, I am terrified of the world. For me, so I lost 5 of my friends in Afghanistan. James Ide, Kay Creamer, Jamie Newman, Eric Yates, and Gerald Jenkins. And for me, when I was there when Jenkins was killed, and that was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And this is going to be graphic, but you should listen. He was killed by an IED that was buried in the ground under a choke point where we all had to walk through. And he just happened to be the most unlucky motherfucker in the world at that moment. And it blew off both of his legs and one of his arms. One of the legs was blown off so high that we could not get a tourniquet around anything to stop the bleeding. By the time the medevac helicopter got there, he had stopped breathing. So we're talking about from explosion, maybe 7 to 8 minutes later, he was gone. And I will not forget what that looks like. I see it every hour of every day of my life. And for me, that peeled back the veil or the curtain, the sort of proverbial Wizard of Oz curtain and revealed, to me at least, that there was no master plan. There was not some guy pulling the strings. We are just bags of pudding with sticks holding us up. And you could just be, in that moment, the most luckiest son of a bitch in the entire world. And your shit's gone. It's over. And I have struggled with that every day since then. For me, before that, there was like magic, like if you just pray enough about it, it'll be okay. Or you know what? That's what God wanted. God called them home. And I don't mean to like shit on anyone's religion. But for me, there was some grand design to life before that. And then after watching someone die in such a traumatic way, for no good reason, I stopped believing in that magic. And man, once that happened for me, like, good Christ, I drive the speed limit. You know, I take an extra 3 seconds when the light turns green to look both ways. I hold my kids' hands all the way to the class door. And even in doing all of those things, I am just petrified of the ground exploding beneath my feet. As happened on 4th of July, I'm terrified that my own house is going to explode. Just because of some fireworks. And it may not be that way for everyone. But that's what PTSD means for me. So, yeah. I'm not sure what prompted all that. So I'm trying to get back on track.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing such a intimate story that, let's be honest, just shapes who you are as a person. I'm sure you've told other people that story, but it's just, I know you're talking to me, and it means a lot to me to see how impactful this service has been on you. I'm not a veteran. I've never served. I have many friends who are. I've had a couple of deep conversations, but that's the first time I've ever had a story relayed so precisely and graphically. So, we started talking about the no room for emotions in the service, in the combat zone, but we shifted to the PTSD thing with realizing that no emotion can bottle these feelings up on occasion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm certainly no expert in any of these things, but I don't know if talking about it is a good thing or if all it does is freshen the wound. But at the same time, I know it's very important for me and hopefully for the audience to kind of understand where you as a person are coming from and where many others like you are coming from. So all I can say is that I'm thankful that you shared that. But
yeah, I think that it's important for people to hear. when you have these opinions that we should go to war, I'm not saying that your opinion is wrong, but you should understand what it is that you're trying to sign people up to do.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. Um, there are, as in life individually, there are consequences to our specific decisions, but there are grand consequences to our decisions uh, as a country, as a people, and as humans. Um, and I think it's just incredibly important that we are not dismissive of the consequences. I mean, sometimes the consequences are necessary, maybe just, maybe even uh, uh, what we need to do with life, but we can't just throw people's lives around willy nilly and expect it all to just work out in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to change topics a little bit.
We can keep going. I'm fine with that.
As I said at the beginning,
I
this is
I
your.
didn't come on this interview to answer like, so what were your favorite boots?
Yeah, exactly. No, at the beginning, I'm going to put in a little just a warning at the beginning to make sure that everybody is aware of the
Shit's graphic, yo.
well, war's graphic. You know, I mean, it's you know, I have maybe a morbid fascination with military footage and combat footage but it sticks with me. It strikes me as real, not just a video game, which I think I strongly believe that video games don't make people violent. That's not at all a conversation I'm trying to have here, but sometimes we get desensitized to the significance of some of the things we see because it's easy for our minds to say, "Oh, I've seen this before in a game." You know, it's not as serious as it really is. So I think it's, yeah, like I said, I think it's very important for us to have this conversation so that people can just ground their thoughts when it comes to this kind of thing. If you have anything else you want to say about your deployment in either Iraq or Afghanistan, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I I'm going to use the word fascinated. I'm fascinated by what you have been saying to me, but I hope that has the correct respect. You're receiving that with the right respect that it's intended.
So, uh, so two of my friends, Eric Yates and Jamie Newman, were killed in the same night. They were killed in a town called Makwan, Afghanistan. It's a town that we razed, R-A-Z, razed, which means that we leveled it and made it no longer a thing. We did that because the Taliban were using it as a base of operations, launching attacks from it, and just the way that it was constructed made it difficult for us to deal with them. So we went in there and we essentially invaded that town and went house to house, cleared everyone out of there who hadn't already gotten out of there, given our warnings, and fought the Taliban in Makwan, sort of compound to compound. Jamie was killed by an IED. We had to, so we don't leave people behind, dead or alive. Everyone comes home. There are still teams working in Vietnam to locate the remains of
aviators
fallen service members,
and
right.
you know,
Same with Europe. There are teams in Europe who are looking to locate missing in action um, service members. We had to carry Jamie's remains out on a stretcher, and it took us a couple of trips because we kind of kept finding pieces of him. I say that because, again, there's sort of like this hidden cost to war that only those who've been there paid or have witnessed, and I think that we don't talk about these stories. You don't hear about them because they're not glamorous. They don't inspire you to buy war bonds, as it were. They don't make you want to serve your country. They don't help recruiting. They don't make for movies. All they do is make you uncomfortable. But I think that's important because I live my life, and my friends who are still alive live their lives uncomfortably. And you should understand, as a people, we should understand what the sacrifices are that have been made to either preserve our freedoms, to make us feel safe in our beds at night, to assist our allies around the globe in doing the same for their people. I can't harp enough on people tend to lose this romantic sort of relationship they have with their lives, where it's an adventure and everything is fun, and you might have some difficulties, but you look back on them with some sort of
nostalgia, maybe.
Nostalgia, yeah. Like, oh God, remember that time we were living out of my Datsun? Oh, that was terrible. Wasn't that great though?
But yeah, exactly.
So for me and a lot of my friends, we've lost that sort of romantic relationship we have with our lives, and we are haunted by our past, not in a way that would lend to nostalgia, but in a way where, like, I can't stop thinking about that thing because I worry about it happening to me again, worry about it happening to me in general, or I still can't wrap my head around the fact that happened and can happen. I don't know right now, because we're recording this, if you have that counter, but that counter is important because there are people out there, veterans, who are struggling inside their own minds to try and make sense of the world that they live in now, or trying to just get back to some sort of feeling of normalcy, who just don't want to be tortured in the sort of solitude that experiences like that put you in. My wife and I have friends here in town that we hang out with. None of them are veterans. My wife didn't deploy overseas. So I find myself very much alone sometimes. I worked at the VA hospital 5 years as an administrator, and that is the closest that I've ever felt, in many ways, to feeling normal. I was among both patients and employees who are veterans. Lots of those people understood what I went through. I understood what they went through. We both understood the gravity or the magnitude of what that meant. And we were all there, as much shit as the VA gets in the media for, being some terrible organization. We were all there to, at least the veterans in that population, to try and help each other. But beyond that, it can be very lonely. And I have friends now who are struggling mentally. And maybe they still have that stigma in their mind that they don't want to go see mental health because it will make them look weak. Maybe they just don't want to acknowledge that they're not normal, even though they feel it. But if you're one of those people, go get help. There's no shame in that. I went through, still go to, been in therapy for 4 years now. And I've been out of the Army since 2013. So there was a large gap there where I just didn't seek help and just kind of suffered silently in my own thoughts. And I know that there's people out there who are still doing that. So, go seek some help. What you experienced was not normal. You're having a normal reaction to it. You got to talk to someone about that shit. And if you know someone who is suffering, whether they be a veteran or a non-veteran, encourage them to seek help.
Brings that, I'm going to butcher the saying, but there's a saying that I'd rather listen to your problems for the night than attend your funeral tomorrow. It's like and yeah, this goes for almost anybody. Well, for anybody I know, I would happily have a conversation. It can be as comfortable or as difficult as it needs to be for you. But I love and cherish my friends, and I would never want to see anything bad happen to them, and even just the thought of knowing that people are suffering in silence, that they feel like they have nowhere to turn, that they have no recourse other than a final exit from the stage is, it's upsetting, obviously, but I may not be able to professionally help with the conversation, but I will help in whatever way I can. And, every human I've ever met is compassionate enough to have that realization, I think. So, maybe they're calloused to it initially, but most people warm up to the idea.
Yeah. The Veterans Crisis Line is there to help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The phone number is 1-800-273-8255. Press the number 1. That's the Veterans Crisis Line.
Do you have anything else that you'd like to discuss regarding your deployments, the trip home?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably go on for days with stories for you, um, to try and hammer point the home that I'm hammer home the point that I'm trying to make, which is um, if my stories make you feel uncomfortable, that's how vets with PTSD sort of live their lives in an uncomfortable state.
It's kind of the point, you know,
Yeah.
like the
But I
conversation we're having. That's, I mean, obviously making people uncomfortable is not necessarily what we, well, it's not what I set out to do necessarily. I wanted to educate, but at the same time,
I think that's
education
education.
sometimes is uncomfortable, you
Yeah.
know.
But no, I don't think that I would, you know, add much more to that.
Okay. Do you mentioned that you were you worked at the VA hospital after you were discharged.
Yeah.
Do you do you think that was an eye-opening experience any more than service itself? Like, did you get exposed to more of the physical ailments that that impact veterans? Did you see things that surprised you while you were working at the VA?
Um, I don't know how to answer your question precisely. I I came to the understanding that um some people suffer for a long time. Um, and everyone suffers differently. Uh, and that doesn't make you any more or less of a human being, um, depending on how you suffer or how long you suffer for. Um, what really um, impacted me about the VA, about my time there, um, was seeing the mental health patients there and seeing how they are sort of still treated in that sort of stigmatic way. Uh, Forget about the army for a second. We as a society tend to not treat mental health with the same sort of importance as we treat physical health.
I couldn't agree more.
And that's so important that when someone comes to a hospital, place where you should go when you need help, um, it's so important that you feel like what you need help for is legitimate. To go there and see a non-veteran staff member treat you like you're full of shit, or just to not treat you the same as they would treat someone who came in having a cardiac event. um, for someone to diminish that doesn't help us as a population, to sort of start healing from those wounds. And myself, um, I've got PTSD, I've got a traumatic brain injury, I have shrapnel in my shoulder. Um, I'm torn up, 3 ways from Sunday, or whatever they say. Um, I don't have it as bad as others do, but um, I need help sometimes. And the same with others. I see them come in for help, and I saw people that would just sort of like treat them like they weren't really sick. And I saw some of the reactions of those veterans. They would leave. I worked in the ER. They would just leave, and whether they left because they were angry about the way they were being treated, whether they left because someone made them believe that they were they didn't need help. Doesn't matter to me. What matters is that they needed help and they didn't get it. And personally, I went to that place every day and gave 110% of myself to do the best that I could to take care of as many veterans as I could, the best way I could. And that burned me out. 5 years working there, and it burnt me to a crisp. I was done. Because those sorts of behaviors work against you. And as much as that sounded like me shitting on the VA is a good organization that does a lot of good for a lot of veterans in this country and around the world. You can live in another country and get treated by the VA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was an eye-opening experience for me. But it was an experience that ultimately, burned me up. And maybe someday I'll go back to that career. But just, what I took away from that is that there are a lot of people suffering with mental health problems, and we need to treat them equally as you would treat someone with a physical health problem.
Right. Just because they're not going to die on the operating table doesn't mean they're not potentially going to have some other event that could end in the same result.
That's right.
I think it's very important. We're probably not going to go down the road too far of mental health awareness, but it's incredibly important that everybody realizes that the psyche is. Let me take a step back. You said earlier that you realized that we're bags of jelly with sticks holding us up.
Yeah.
The psyche is equally as fragile.
Yeah.
And just because it's not broken in the same way doesn't mean that we can't treat breaks in the psyche, or at least understand them and treat people humanely. And that's what it boils down to, is it's important in life for compassion to be very high on your default state of dealing with people.
Yeah. It doesn't cost you anything to be kind to each other.
Right. Just leaving the bluster at the door and just having a honest conversation. If there's one takeaway from this conversation, hopefully that can be the day-to-day conversation for everybody. It's it's just very important to treat each other with the respect that we all deserve. We're all just human, trying to get through life one step at a time. Obviously, the veterans have, like you said, some have. What's the saying? All have given some have given all. And
yeah, all give some give all.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the saying was two in the bush is worth one in the hand or something like that, but I wasn't.
No, I just. That one. It's important for us in this conversation, in this context, to realize that the veterans we deal with on a day-to-day basis are sometimes dealing with more extreme versions of some things that we can deal with on a day-to-day basis as well. So I think it's just everybody needs to realize that everybody can be treated like a human. Um, but that's my personal take on it.
Yeah.
So we kind of touched on life since discharge, but has anything else changed? You know, um, have you discovered passions that you never thought you would have had prior to the service? Have things become more vivid for you? You know, like is anything more interesting than it was prior?
Staying alive.
Uh, 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 uh.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an easy time finding one thing for me to sort of like settle on and be passionate about. I was very much passionate when I worked at the VA about veterans' health, um, and keeping as much as my veteran family alive as I could. And I, I don't know. I have 3 kids now. They take up a lot of my time, which is great. I enjoy that. Uh, things that have changed. Yeah. They talk about when you get out of the military that there's like this transitionary period. Um, and they even put like a timeline on it. I think when I was getting out from like, it was like 6 to 18 months is your transitionary period when you get out to sort of like transitioning back into like normal life.
It's
Well, they're full of shit.
yeah, that's
Yeah, they're
kind
full of
of
shit. My transitionary
presumptive.
period has been like 10 years now or something like that. 8 years. I can't math. Um, so I don't know. It's tough. Tough one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are there any specifics that you feel the public needs to know about veterans? Is there anything that the lay people do, or you know, for instance, like the fireworks? You know, I used to be big into fireworks, and
Yeah, me too.
I used to love them and blow them up all
Mm-hmm.
the time, and you know,
Yeah.
it's still a fun spectacle um,
Yeah.
if it's done right. But I think it's, you know, that's one of those things that we as a society may need to um, have some compassion when dealing with. Should we do it? Should every house have a big party every fourth? Maybe not necessarily, but is there anything else that the public can be aware of?
Um, like I said before, all gave some gave all. Um, mental health is a real thing. Um, and lots of veterans suffer from mental health problems. Uh, there is no greater organization that reaches out to more vets than the VA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I said before, as much crap as they get in the media, they do a lot of good for a lot of veterans. They do more good than make mistakes. They just, you don't get reporting on that. No one, it doesn't make for a good story,
Right.
so you don't hear about that as often. Um, so I would say, the Wounded Warrior Project is good. I think that they deserve your support. I think the VA is also very good. They deserve your support. Um, another organization, maybe disabled American veterans. They do a lot of good. They go to bat for veterans in their disability cases. They make sure you get the help you need. They'll give you a representative to help you navigate the post discharge process through the VA. But yeah, I was a member of the VFW, but Most that's a lot of old guys sitting around, smoking cigars, drinking beer, which isn't a bad thing. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think that any organization that's out there that's made up of veterans, that's there to help veterans, deserves your support. Um, and I think that if you're a veteran, it doesn't hurt to be involved in any of those organizations. Those people will treat you like family, and they are there to help you. So if you can get involved just to have friends somewhere in a place where you may not have friends, just to have a support system of people who are there to support you, you should reach out.
All right. We've talked now for almost an hour and a half. We've learned about your pre-service history when you were young and naive. We learned about your some entertaining things about boot camp, your training service, your career as a dog handler. We had some heartfelt moments about your deployment, in particular in Afghanistan. We talked about your post-service life. Is there anything else you want to talk about with this platform?
Yeah. There's two things that I wanted to actually mention.
Okay. Stage is yours.
Thank you. So, if you guys enjoyed hearing about my life as a service member and a veteran, you're gonna love Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh, Jesus.
The #1 MMORPG out today.
Okay. And cut.
And
we're leaving that in, man.
Yeah, it's fine. I had to. I just couldn't leave it.
So
It
for
was
those
sitting
of
there on
you,
the table, and I was like, "Nah, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take it and run with it."
this has been a running joke internally for quite a while now. Every time.
Be kind to each other. As many things that are out there today trying to divide us as a nation, as a human race, I cannot beg you enough to be kind to each other, because we are all members of the same country, and beyond that, we are all members of the same human race just trying to survive. Don't hate your fellow American because they believe something slightly different than you. Don't wish harm on anyone just because they're trying to survive. Just, it doesn't cost you anything to be kind to each other. I think that's all that I would say.
I completely agree. And though the community that I have is very respectful and kind, I think it does need to be said all the same that, we're online right now. A lot of people find it very easy to type up some spiteful or hateful thing on Twitter and send it out into the ether, or type something out in a game. You just kind of quickly call somebody something you would never say to their face. And social media has been a good thing in a lot of ways for keeping people in touch and growing communities, but it's also been extremely negative for a lot of people in a lot of ways. I think it's just, as we talked about earlier, everybody needs to just sort of be a compassionate human and take a minute to read through what you're typing out before you send it. Take a second to say, does this need to be said? Does this bring any value to anyone's life in any way. And if it doesn't, maybe it doesn't need to be said. Maybe we can all collectively take a step in the right direction for, compassion and good health, physically and mentally, together. So, I thank you very much for having this conversation, for being my friend, for allowing me to pick your brain, for everything, honestly.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's been a pleasure. And to the rest of you guys, just be good. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.